Before he became the King of Philippine Comedy, he was just a skinny boy standing outside movie theaters in Tondo, Manila. His name was Rodolfo Vera Quizon Sr. But back then, no one could have imagined that this poor kid with holes in his slippers would one day become Dolphy. Born in 1928 in one of Manila's roughest districts, Dolphy grew up in a home where laughter wasn't entertainment, it was survival. His father was a ship mechanic, his mother a homemaker, and their family of 10 lived through the Depression, war, and poverty. But the cinema became his escape. Each night, he'd peek through the theater doors, watching actors on the big screen and dreaming of someday being up there himself. This moment, a boy, the crowd, and the silver screen was where Dolphy's story began. But what came next would take him from the streets of Tondo to stages across the world. But before we move on, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our uploads. During those dark years, theaters weren't just places for laughter. They were safe havens where Filipinos could forget the fear, if only for a few minutes. Dolphy found himself drawn to those stages, first as a dancer, then as a young performer. Even while bombs echoed in the distance, he would go up, sing, dance, crack jokes, anything to keep spirits alive. It wasn't fame yet, but it was purpose. In interviews years later, Dolphy would recall sneaking past curfews, dodging soldiers, just to reach the small theaters that still dared to open. He performed for meager pay, sometimes food, sometimes nothing at all. But each laugh from the audience was worth more than gold. Every night he went on stage, he was gambling with his life, but it didn't matter. The stage had become his home.
Teka lang. Gabi ba't maliwanag? May ilaw eh!
That experience shaped him in ways few understood. Comedy, for Dolphy, was never about making fun of others. It was about giving people a reason to smile when the world around them was collapsing. Those wartime performances hardened him, sharpened his timing, and taught him empathy. By the time the war ended, Dolphy wasn't just another kid from Tondo anymore. He was a performer molded by chaos. He had learned how to make people laugh, even when life gave them nothing to laugh about. And that skill would soon open doors he never thought possible. Because in the ruins of post-war Manila, the entertainment industry was rebuilding. Radio stations, film studios, and theaters were desperate for new faces. And Dolphy, now a young man with unmatched charm and sharp wit, was ready to take the leap. But fate had something unexpected in store, a single opportunity that would change everything. And it all began with a film that no one even remembers today. When the war ended, Manila was in ruins, but its people were hungry for laughter again. Stages reopened, films were being made, and Dolphy, still in his teens, was eager to find his place in that new world. The theaters that once echoed with air raid sirens now buzzed again with music, laughter, and the promise of a new beginning. Then came the turning point. One night, while performing at Avenue Theater, Dolphy caught the eye of a man who would change his life. Fernando Poe Sr., one of the biggest names in Philippine cinema. Poe saw something in this young performer. Something raw, natural, and magnetic. He offered Dolphy a small role in the 1946 film Dugo at Bayan, a war drama that needed extras and minor characters. Dolphy didn't hesitate. It was his first time stepping in front of a camera, and though he barely had any lines, he poured everything into that brief moment. For him, it wasn't just another job. It was a doorway. The movie came and went, largely forgotten in history. But for Dolphy, it marked the birth of a dream that would never die. Soon after, he found himself drawn deeper into the world of entertainment. Radio shows, theater, and films that needed comic relief. His natural wit and humble charm began to stand out. Producers started to notice how easily he could make people laugh. Not by forcing jokes, but by being real, relatable, and unpredictable. But fame was still far away. He was often cast in bit parts, the sidekick, the fool, the background character. Yet Dolphy never complained. He studied the stars, learned their timing, and used every performance to sharpen his instincts. He knew his moment would come, and when it did, he'd be ready. And that moment arrived sooner than expected. Not on the silver screen, but through the airwaves of Philippine radio. Because before he became a movie legend, Dolphy would first become a voice that made an entire nation laugh. At first, he took any job he could get, playing background voices, delivering one-liners, or filling in for absent actors. But even in those tiny roles, Dolphy's natural humor stood out. He had the rare gift of making even silence funny.
Sandali. Ingatan mo, ha? Kabibigay lang sa akin yan. Please lang, ha?
But everything changed when he met Panchito Alba, another young comedian with a sharp tongue and flawless timing. Together, they formed one of the most iconic duos in Philippine entertainment. Their chemistry was effortless. Panchito played the confident joker, Dolphy the lovable underdog. They could make audiences burst into laughter with just a glance or a pause. As their popularity grew, so did their opportunities. Radio opened doors to variety shows, live performances, and film cameos. Soon, Dolphy and Panchito became a household name, a symbol of joy in a rebuilding nation. Dolphy's mastery of timing came from years of struggle and survival. He once said he learned comedy from life itself, watching people react to pain, frustration, and absurdity. That's what made his humor universal. It wasn't scripted, it was human. But while radio made him a star, Dolphy's ambitions didn't stop there. He wanted to reach beyond sound, to be seen, to tell stories that made people laugh and think. And soon cinema would give him that chance, because one bold role, one that would shock the industry and break every rule of the time, was about to turn Dolphy from a comedian into a cultural icon.
And then uwi lang ako ng 10 days, balik na naman ako sa Hong Kong for about a year or two, no?
By the early 1960s, Dolphy had already become a familiar face in Philippine entertainment. The funny man everyone loved, the comedian who could turn even the dullest scene into something unforgettable. At the time, Philippine cinema was conservative. Certain roles were off-limits, especially for men who wanted to be leading stars. But Dolphy saw things differently. He believed comedy wasn't just about punchlines, it was about truth. So when he was offered the role of a gay man in the 1969 film Pacifica Falay-Fay, he didn't hesitate. It was a move that shocked the industry. Many warned him it would destroy his image. Pacifica Falay-Fay was more than just a movie. It was a turning point, proving that Dolphy wasn't afraid to challenge norms or take on roles that others avoided.
Basta gusto ko nakangiti ka lang. Pag nabanggit yung pangalan mo, may ngiti ka. May iwan ng ngiti sa'yo.
After Pacifica Falay-Fay, Dolphy became known for pushing boundaries. He took on roles that reflected real Filipino life: the struggling father, the loyal husband, the flawed man who still found humor in hardship. His performances resonated because they were honest. He wasn't just telling jokes, he was telling our stories. That boldness to take risks didn't just redefine his career, it redefined what comedy could be in the Philippines. And soon, his biggest cultural impact wouldn't come from the big screen at all. It would come from a television series that would capture the nation's heart for decades. Because just when people thought Dolphy had done it all, he created something that would become part of Filipino family life itself. After years of breaking barriers in film, Dolphy was already a household name. In the early 1970s, television was exploding in popularity across the Philippines. And in 1971, a new sitcom premiered that would change the landscape of Filipino comedy forever: John and Marsha. Dolphy played John Purantong, a humble, loving husband constantly caught between his overbearing mother-in-law and the challenges of raising a family in poverty. The setup was simple, but the execution, pure brilliance. Audiences instantly saw themselves in John. He wasn't rich, he wasn't perfect, he was real.
I don't know, but maybe somebody up there likes me so much, so na
Every episode balanced laughter and life lessons, touching hearts while delivering sharp, relatable humor. For 2 decades, John and Marsha dominated Philippine TV, becoming the longest-running sitcom of its time. Families didn't just watch it, they grew up with it. As television evolved, so did Dolphy. When John and Marsha finally ended in the early 1990s, most would have expected him to slow down. But Dolphy wasn't done making people laugh. Instead, he returned to TV with a new generation in mind, and a brand new show that would carry his legacy even further.
Nung binigyan nga ako ng role na gano'n, ayoko nga eh. Sige na niya, pwede ka, pwede. Nag-click. Pagka hinihika ako, lumalayo ako sa tao. Ayoko na didinig, may violin akong kasama.
By the 2000s, Dolphy had already lived a lifetime most could only dream of. Decades of fame, countless awards, and a nation that adored him. But behind the laughter, behind the perfectly timed jokes and warm smiles, was a man quietly battling his own struggles. Dolphy was known for his generosity, the kind of person who'd give even when he had little left. But that compassion often came with chaos. Over the years, his personal life became as colorful as his career. He had relationships with several women and was father to 18 children, each from different stages of his life, each carrying a piece of his legacy. Despite the unconventional setup, Dolphy was known to be a present and loving father. Among the most talked about chapters of his personal life was his longtime partnership with Jaza Padilla, a singer and actress much younger than him. Their relationship raised eyebrows at first, but over time it became one of the most enduring love stories in Philippine showbiz.
Parehong may karelasyon pa sina Dolphy at Shaja noon. Nagsasama pa rin noon sina Dolphy at Alma Moreno.
Through the highs and lows, Zaja stood by him, especially during his final years. But even as Dolphy grew older, one topic became the center of national conversation. Why was he never named a national artist? Many argued he had done more for Philippine entertainment than anyone in his generation. He made laughter an art form, broke barriers in film and television, and represented the Filipino spirit in every performance. Yet, bureaucratic delays and political disagreements repeatedly stalled the honor. Dolphy himself, humble as always, brushed off the issue. He once said, "If it's meant for me, it will come. If not, the love of the people is enough." That simple response summed up who he was, a man who valued laughter and gratitude over titles and recognition. But time was catching up. Dolphy's health began to decline as he battled chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Even then, he refused to be seen as weak. When friends visited, he would still crack jokes, determined to make others smile until the end. And when that final curtain fell on July 10th, 2012, the Philippines didn't just lose a comedian, it lost a piece of its heart. Yet even in death, Dolphy's story wasn't over, because what followed was a wave of tributes, tears, and one final debate about how the country would remember its king of comedy.
Naging leading man din siya ni ngayoy Batangas Representative Vilma Santos Recto sa pelikulang Burlesque Queen.
When news of Dolphy's passing broke on July 10th, 2012, an entire nation went silent. For days, television networks replayed his old movies and sitcoms, and social media overflowed with memories, laughter, and tears. The tributes poured in, from fellow comedians, actors, politicians, and ordinary fans who felt like they had lost a family member. Today, his influence lives on, in reruns, in the comedians he inspired, and in the timeless laughter that connects every Filipino generation. His shows still air, his lines still quoted, and his values, zero humility, kindness, and joy, continue to echo in Filipino culture. Dolphy may have left the stage, but his laughter still fills the room. Because legends like him don't fade. They live on in every smile they've inspired. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more inspiring life stories like Dolphy's, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming uploads.